go ahead and get started. I know we're all very busy this time of year. So again, thanks for being here, and we're excited. I'm excited to share my experience building successful performing companies with you. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. And then if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat bar. So a little bit about me. I've still owned multiple locations of Tiffany's Dance Academies in the San Francisco Bay Area. We also have a satellite location down in Santa Barbara. I'm also the creator and founder of the Twinkle Star Dance Program, and I also produce the Dance the Dream Parade event. So mostly first thing I do every day is manage my dance studio. I'm still teaching, still choreographing, still doing very much the same job as all of you. So I speak to you today from being kind of in that world with you as well. And then also coming to you as somebody who's been doing this for about 25 years with kind of some history behind me, right? So there's some things that I've seen, some changes that I've made, and I'm hoping that I can help you in any way that I can to create a great performing company program at your studio. All right, so we've had up to 300 performing company dancers. This is not just students. These are just students from our studios that did our performing company program. And currently I have about 175, which is great. And I've been doing this for, I think this is my 24th year owning studio. And we did a performing company program from the very first year. And it's changed over the years. And again, I'm going to give you some insights as to what I think will help you build your best program at your studio. Okay, so we're going to dive into part two, but first we're going to revisit part one. So for those of us might have missed last week, maybe you've seen the recording, but we're going to talk just a little bit about what we talked about last week, just to remind ourselves of what we talked about. And then also, I'd love to hear, after part one, if any of you really kind of did listen to that and created some parts of your vision, I would love to hear about that. So if you want to put that in the chat, I'd like to know. So here we go. Okay. So the first thing I think that we need to do, and we talked about this at length last session, when we're either building a new program or rebuilding, right? So I think each year should be a little bit of a rebuild. What worked well last year? What do we want to see for the following year? Is to know what your vision is and who you are and what do you stand for, right? So it's like you are the person that starts at the top, your vision for the dancers. And I'm not just talking about what we want them to win, what kind of costumes we want them to wear. I'm talking about what we want them to learn, what we want them to know, what we want them to experience, whether they are with us for 1 year or all the way through their senior year. So the first and foremost, we want to really work on that vision. And your vision is going to change over time because naturally you're evolving as a human over time, and things that you thought were important 10 years ago may not be important now. So this is going to be a really important part of continuing this process. So for me, I want to build a program based on intention and not short-term goals. So if my intention is to create happy, healthy human beings that go out in the world and either continue dance and or just take what they've learned in dance and make the world a better place and serve others, then that's my intention. It's not the winning or the accolades or we're the best studio. It is we're going to use dance as a conduit to that goal. So I really feel like you want to try to build your program based on whatever intention that you have. And I feel like that intention needs to be that broader based 360-degree view intention versus not that short-term goals. And I think you'll know that pretty easily what that means for you. But spend some time in that and think about what that means for yourself. Next, I want you to take that dance philosophy, like how you feel the dance is beneficial to your students and what you want them to learn, and how do you feel dance serves your community? And that's your dance philosophy. And there's some consequential benefits from that. And from there, you're going to create that mission statement. And I think your mission statement says what your program will do, what the goals are, right? What you want them to accomplish. And that needs to be very clear and concise, and I think and heartfelt and personal. Don't just copy someone else's mission statement, because like I said last week, you can't copy someone else. You are literally who you are. You came to this job with your experiences, your knowledge, your training, whether it be, big ballet base, not so much big ballet base, big jet, whatever it is, you are who you are. And whatever you create has to come from you. So make sure you put this together so that your parents and your students can know this is what you stand for. This is the mission that you have, because that will help you weed out the people that maybe just aren't on the same track as you. And it'll make it a better experience for everybody in your program. Okay, so this is just a sample of our Tiffany's Dance Academy mission statement. And you can read it for yourself and sort of see kind of what was important to me, what's important to me now. And I think if I had redoing this like 2 years ago, what's important to me now is maybe not as important as it was before. But I did create an entire generation of dancers that are off doing amazing things. So I'm not saying that my goals, 10 years ago were wrong. They were just my goals at that time. And I think that's what I'm getting at, is like, you just really need to spend some time with yourself to understand where you are now and where you can lead the dancers to where you want them to be. Okay, next, once you've got that vision, philosophy, mission statement, all of that, I want you to plan that vision meeting, right? So come and learn about the Tiffany's Dance Academy Performing Company program, parent meeting, etc. And it's best on Zoom, I feel, because you can create the environment, people can listen, you can record this, you can send it out, creating a logo or graphic, putting together a nice presentation. But a lot of times these meetings become more of the nuts and bolts. We're talking more nuts and bolts today, for sure. But I don't want that meeting, that initial meeting with your parents and your students or whoever you're inviting, to be about those facts. Because the minute you give them facts, like how much does it cost, what type of events, when, all those like sort of nuts and bolts things, they'll stop listening to your vision, because that's what they think they've come for. But your goal is to find people that align with you. And to be honest with you, let's take your twinkle 4 or 5-year-olds, 5, 6, your show stars 7, 8, your under 8s right now. If they're not on your performing company and they've been at your studio, I will tell you 99% of the time, they're going to align with you. They're going to align with you because they've been at your studio. And they're just coming to find out what this next program is, because you're leading them, remember. So if they're coming from other studios, they may not align with you because they're coming from somewhere else. It's a whole different conversation. If they're a little older and you've been doing something different and now you're going to change it, that might not be in alignment, right? But the good news is that for the most part, your 8 and unders are already on board with you, and you're just taking them to that next place. So that's why this vision meeting is really important, for them to understand what the broader picture is. Because, gosh, you guys, if we are going to spend our time going, can you believe this parent who cares about whether or not her kid wins this or that? Can you believe this? And you're like, well, yeah, I can, if that's where you were leading them. If you didn't tell them otherwise, if every event you did for your performing company was a dance competition, then obviously that is what they think is important, because that's where you're taking them. So, if that makes any sense. So if we want a balanced approach, we have to lead with a balanced message, and making sure that they understand that, yes, we are going to attend events where there are going to be places given, or let's say they're going to be adjudicated for a certain thing. But we don't feel that that is the end all be all of what we're going to do here, if that makes any sense. So plan your vision meeting. But again, it starts with that vision, mission statement, what you think dance does for the dancer, what you think it does for the community. I think that's an important thing to think about. Sometimes I don't even know. We teach dance, we get on the stage, and we get so caught up in the details and the doing that we forget to think about what we feel like is the overall purpose of what we do. Put that into some slides, make sure you have enough time for people to attend your meeting. So that's just a little recap on kind of, that was like the, a crash course and what we talked about last time. But if you weren't with us last time, there is a recording of that and you can listen to it in its entirety. And I would love to hear more about what your missions are, because I think it's going to be different for everybody. All right, I'm take a sip of this. All right, next we're going to shift into marketing your program. You can have a great vision and a great idea, and you have all these things, but if nobody knows about it, then we can't really build a very big program, right? And it depends on, I don't know how big you want it to be. Just so you know, typically your performing company programs in a given studio are maybe 10% of your studio student base. And that's why we have to make sure that when we're creating these programs that they can work nicely with the majority of our students, right? So, but we want people to know about it. And this takes a minute to think about. So we are in January. It's a perfect time to start thinking about marketing your program for next year. First thing you'll want to do is, like I said, maybe create a graphic or something that sets it apart, like Tiffany's Dance Academy Performing Company. It's a different logo, a different something, but it stays in the same brand as maybe my studio logo. From there, I'm going to make maybe some good old-fashioned posters of kids of all ages we create. And it'll say like the parent info meeting, which would be my vision meeting. And then maybe when those placement auditions would be, put those up, make sure they're up a month before you even have your meeting. You need a long time for people to see what this is about. And you're going to see it in different places. You're going to see it in an email. They're going to see it on maybe a link to your website, on posters, maybe it's a Facebook post. Don't just do one thing, right? So you need to put it in all places and have a long time. The other thing we've created was a little postcard. So we take whatever marketing poster we created and we made a little like postcard, and it had the same information on it. We did print those out. They're not very expensive. And we give those to our teachers to hand out, or maybe your admins. And that sort of talk to a parent, like, hi, have you heard about our program that we have? It's a wonderful program for dancers who love to dance and just kind of want to take it a little further. Come learn about it, right? So having those little postcards work great. The other thing that we do is we have our teachers do nominations. Now, we open our performing company up to all dancers of a certain age, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But getting those email nominations, or maybe something we used to mail things home. You can do that. It's a little more expensive and cumbersome, but you can. We do an email now that goes directly to the parent that said, Miss Mariah has nominated your child for the performing company. We think you'd be great at it. She's showing that she really loves dance, et cetera, et cetera. And then from there, they come to the meeting. And I do think a lot of people get that and go, oh, that's great. Now, is there a moment of like, do you give all nominations to everybody? I mean, not really. We have our teachers kind of tell us. Sometimes they'll say this entire class or whatever it is. And really, we're looking for dancers that really look like they would love it, right? But we take anyone who's interested in doing the program. That is a key. It's, for me, I don't make any eliminations at the age of 7, because the truth is, if they're willing to do the work, if they're willing to take the classes, and then that is what we're going to train them. They don't come to me at 7 knowing everything they need to know, like a professional dance company, and then we're making eliminations. So I think that is key, and I'm not sure it's included in all this. We'll talk about placement in a minute. But the truth is, we are going to market this program to everyone at our studio. And I think maybe the next slide says it's, but the emphasis will be on the under 8s. All right, look at this, recruitment. Okay, so I say focus on the under 8s. You will get other kids, right? Maybe they just joined you and they're 10, 11, 12. That's great. It is much harder to bring them into the fold at that time, truthfully. But you can do it. But the majority of your students that I think that will join and help you build a successful program are going to be under the age of 8, mostly in that kindergarten level. So if you're a little bit disheartened right now because you've lost a group, or you can see that like, this group might be leaving, have no fear, right? You will always have a new group that you can build with. And before you know it, those 5 and 6-year-olds will be your juniors and your teens and your seniors. And you can start over on this at any time that you want, and you can make it whatever you want it to be. But I do want your recruitment focus. If I'm giving you my suggestions and my knowledge, is we're going to focus into the under 8s. It's much easier that way. They've been at our studio. They really only know us. It's much easier for them to align with what we do. We also want our teacher announcements. So teachers, I tell them, like, if I was teaching a lot of the Twinkles right now, which I'm not, but when I did, almost every one of my Twinkle 4-5 classes became a performing company member, because I look at these kids and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to take you to the next level next year and do all these things. And I think if a teacher sees the potential in the dancer and can vocalize that to the parent and to the dancer, and they're going to be like, yeah, I'm on board too. This sounds great. So have teachers talk to their parents and the kids. Don't just make it an email that it's over there. You know, we've got this great program. We think you guys would be great at this. Please come and listen to what it's all about. Then we've got our nomination emails, and like I said, our postcards, and then of course our parent information Zoom meeting. So this is a little grassroots, right? So a lot of it's talking to people. A lot of my dancers who do parade with us, who come to Dance the Dream, who are rec kids, a lot of them join performing company. It's called touch points. If they only see you once a week and they really never see you again, or another teacher, or have another experience with you, they may not be as committed, or the relationship isn't as deep. But once they do maybe one extra thing, oh, this is really fun, get to know you and your staff, you will get more dancers that will adopt the program or join the program, I believe. Okay. So as I said earlier, we don't make any eliminations. So anybody who wants to join the company, there are some exceptions, right? If they're 15 years old and they've never danced before, I probably don't have a place for them. If they've come to me and they've danced a few years and they're that age, I can put them maybe in a production where they could be a part of things, right? I always look for something. Because, you know, sometimes they come to dance later and I don't want them to feel like we don't have something for them. But we don't make any eliminations on most cases. I'm going to place them according to their age and level. Okay, so sometimes they'll come to me at 9 and they kind of like, they really probably need to be with this mini group where the ages are 7, 8, and maybe they're the oldest one, but they're, you know, they will look great in there, and that's what they'll do. So that's what we do. We place them according to that. I try to create bigger groups at the start. One of the biggest mistakes, I think, is specifically at that younger age, is to say, all right, these 6 dancers are here, and then I've got 5 here, and I've got 7 there. And I realize why you would do that, because those 6 dancers are probably the ones that are exactly at that level. And if they all did it, it'd be wonderful, but they won't all sign up again. And someone will quit, and now there'll only be 4 of them. And then when you train those 4, and those classes are like an island and no one can join in eventually because the level has moved up and there's only 4. And that's a real big problem for your whole studio health as a whole. Okay. So when they're under 8, continue to like see how you can combine them and create bigger groups, because they will naturally, there will be attrition naturally over time. But they will move as a bigger group through your studio, and it's for the health of your studio. That's the best thing to do. Also, we don't have any group names. Now, I might, in the like, I guess, back end, call our, you know, I don't know, 5 to whatever premieres and minis and whatever, but I don't call them like, if I have a group of dancers that are doing like a jazz piece with me and there's 18 of them, right? That's just called a mini jazz rehearsal. And then there's another mini jazz rehearsal that's like 7 kids or 10 kids, right? And then there's a mini, so we only do that just so we can keep it straight in our minds. But I don't tell the parents, your kid is this exact thing, and they do these exact levels. Now I try to keep them all in the same levels of technique classes. I think that's important because, like I said, when we talk about financially, like my performing company is ruining my studio because it's taking up all my time because I have all these million different levels, right? So you try to keep them moving through, but I don't necessarily say, all right, congratulations, you are a this color or this group. You're a starlet, that's great. But what happens if you want to also cast like a lyrical dance and they can't all do it, right? So I'm just throwing that out there because I think it should be everyone's a part of the company. And then you can organize that how you see fit. But I like to be able to cast my pieces based on ability and age, and that not everybody's in every piece, because that's kind of how I'm going to be able to move kids through their abilities. All right. So that's kind of how I do my placement auditions. There are no cuts. You will have to explain this to your parents. They'll be like, audition. Like, you know what? Honestly, for 5 and 6-year-olds, it's literally a class. They're going to come in, you're going to look at them. It's mostly to see who really wants to be a part of this group. Okay. We even place people who can't be there specifically if they're under the age of 7. We talk to the teacher and say, okay, they're all going into this group anyway, and we're going to make that first year very easy for them to do because we do want them to just get started. Okay. Okay. So when it comes to like, you've had your placement auditions, you place them according to however you want to organize this. And then you decide which groups take which classes. Because I know that's confusing. So if I take my premieres, I know we'll talk about this in a minute, and I'm like, okay, they are going to take 2 classes a week. I'm going to make it really easy for them to join. I'm not going to monopolize all their family time because I just want them to get started, right? Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take those dancers that I know are on my cast list, and I'm going to enroll them into all the classes that I want them to be in. That is hands down the best way to do it, because otherwise you're having to communicate to those parents, hi, sign up for these classes. And then when they don't do it and they need help, and then now you're having 20 people trying to sign up into classes and you're wondering, are they going to do it or not? So we pre-place everyone. Our admins do that. Super easy. I'll say this entire group takes this ballet, this jazz, this rehearsal, boom, boom, boom. Now they're all in. And then from there, we will say, all right, cast lists are, okay, I should say this. We don't post cast lists. There is a reason for this, because there are lots of moms or parents who decide that they want to go, well, what is my kid in? Was your kid in? Everyone's interested in that. It's just apparently interesting. So if I post a cast list and it says Steam Heat this and Boogie 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 Boy this and Fireball that, then there's a lot more comparing and contrast. And then they're like, wait, can I be in that dance? And you've given them too much information. They don't need that. So instead, they just get placed into a class. Can they see who's in the class? No, but can they ask their friends? Yes. So I don't post who's in the class because it shouldn't be something they're concerned with. They will be concerned with it, but I don't lead them down that path very easily. So I just say, log in to your studio director account, right? They log in and they can see your student's class schedule. That's the most important thing you see. Little Susie is going to dance on Tuesdays from this time and Thursdays on that time. Do you want to do this? Decline by this day, or say yes, and then we'll charge you. You're already in your classes, and or take off a class, move things around, right? So that's where that shuffle comes from. But this really helps with that whole compare and contrast and who's in that and who's not in this. And I think it makes your life a lot easier when it comes to those things. So if we do our registration April 24th, they're already in, then maybe the deadline to decline. So they're already opted in. They have to tell us if they don't want to do it, and or if they want to change their schedule. We'll have a Google Doc and they'll say, yes, I accept my schedule as it is. Yay, charge me. That's an option. Number 2, I accept, but I want to make a few changes. And then from there, our admins will reach out to them, or I don't accept. Yeah. And then from there, we charge everybody. and we get started on our next season's program. So that seems simple and easy. And of course, if you've got questions, go ahead and put those in the chat and I'm happy to answer those. But I think it's a great way to sort of, and it cuts down your time, right? All you're having to do is you create your cast list, you put the classes that they need, share that with your admins, and they can go in and just add those to the classes. All right, let's talk about age groups. So we have, for us, we've got our premier dancers, minis. We do have something called company light that I'll talk about. We have hip hop crew for people who just want to do hip hop crew. And then of course we've got our pre-professional company track. Now that is great and all, but today we're probably going to work really into, and we've got what we call our juniors too. Probably work in those 3 areas today because we're really talking about kind of recruiting those younger kids. So moving on to the next slide. Oh, class requirements. Okay. So you want to consider that jump from once a week. So if we're really going to focus the conversation today, which I like to, about recruiting the under 8s, if they were taking 1 class a week, when you tell them, all right, yeah, you're going to join company, you're going to take 5 classes a week, your tuition's going to go from $90 to $250 or $300, and you're going to do 7 events a year, and they're going to be like, I don't think so. So you do have to think about what that next step is. And if you can, yes, obviously, the more classes they take, the better they're going to get. But if they never start, they'll never get better, right? So you really want to make that initial joining or that program, your premiers, your minis, and even maybe your little juniors, to be something that's why you want to get them at like between 5 and 7. Because if you can get them there, that first year they're taking two hours a week or something, doing a few events. The next year they will take more, right? So then by the time they're your junior group, like your 9 to 12s or whatever, then they're kind of all on the same pace and they're doing gradually more each year. And I want to say something about that, and it's not on the slide, but we used to, when we started our 5 and 7s or 5 and 6s, I started them out at 3.5 hours a week or so. It was like 2 days, and they did a lot more than they're doing now. Let's put it that way. And I don't know if it's because I was personally teaching the Twinkle classes, it was easier for me to recruit this and sell the process, possibly. Or we're just seeing over time that parents are just like, there's a lot more going on. I don't know the answer to that. But in any case, we were like, okay, we've got to get new kids in there. So let's just make a program that's a little lighter to get people in. Now, when I did, if I go back to, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I was doing it that way, by the age of 9, they were really good. Like we're talking like fairly, doing great. And because I was very much, I spent a lot of time in this space. I was doing, every group I was working with twice a week, and I knew what it would take to get them to that level at a certain age. And it was wonderful. And I look back on it and I'm like, that was great. And then we would lose a lot of the best ones around age 11. It's very strange. Like if I took a group of 20 kids, I could probably identify 7 or 8, between 6 and 8 dancers that were like, they're ready to be pushed more and at that age group. And I could identify them around, 6 years old, or the ones that could do more. So I'd pull them out, put them in a smaller group, and then push them further. But they had to also do the big group. And the big group kind of just continued to move along at the pace it could. And the other ones I would push a little further because I could tell that they had an earlier, how do I say this? They just were better earlier. Okay. But it doesn't mean they're going to be better long-term. So here's my story. So you take them out, you put them in that. I did this over and over again. So it's not like I only did it once and this is my only example. And then and then that was called the small group that, all the other kids would love to be in because they could see for their own eyes. These guys are better than us, but they're the same age. We're taking the same classes, but, and then truly, I'm not kidding, around 11 or 12, around that 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I can't say for sure, half of that group would leave. And they were always the ones that thought of the best group. They were always the ones that thought they were the best of the best. Maybe they weren't, I don't know. they were looking for what was next. Because in the parents' mind, and I think this is mostly parents, honestly, but because, oh my gosh, my kid's in a small group and they do very well and blah, 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 blah. And like, even though they were doing so well, and you could say, well, the program's making them very good. And to me, I'm looking at like college or what they're going to do later. I really don't care so much about, on stage New York. I just know that that's kind of how I'm getting them to that next step. And we would lose them all. I mean, like of one of the groups, I mean, I think I had 3 left of the group that was the best group, but the kids who stayed, the ones that were working towards that group stayed longer. Okay. And in the end, my teen senior group, maybe like sophomore, junior, seniors, were always a surprise to me. I'm like, wow, you were in that other group, but they had to keep reaching. So they didn't, it was interesting. You might lose some of that main group, right? Because they're like, forget it. They're not paying enough attention to me. But the ones you paid the most attention to leave. And the ones that you like maybe feel like they're not paying enough attention, you are, but they're reaching. They're constantly trying to get somewhere and they stay longer and their process is better. So what did we learn here? What I think I've learned is that I don't need to make them that good that fast. They burn out, number one. Number two, I lose them because they think they've arrived. And the reach is where it's at, I think, just in general for all of us. So I have groups right now that I'm sending pieces on and I'm like, wow, they're like 3 years behind, not 2 years behind, but I love it because they're happy, they're reaching, they're working together. And I can tell they're going to stay longer. I'm going to be able to make more of an impact on these dancers long term because I'm going to get them all the way through high school. And it's not just to keep them like in my little, my little box. It's that I love having them when they get older, the relationship deepens. It's awesome. They leave, they have that place they can come back to. So they teach for me and all the good things happen. Right. So I just wanted to say that because it's okay to start slow. If you've always started fast and you're like, man, it's the same thing. They leave, they get burned out. Just take it slower. Let them progress at a slower pace. I promise at a certain age when they're a little older, like I've got some juniors that are 12 and 13 right now, and they're doing like my 9-year-olds could have done what they're doing, but they're getting it faster now because just their brain body connection. Right. And it's just more fun for me because I feel like I'm not pushing them. They're not pushing me and it's more enjoyable. So I did want to say that. Okay. So think about how many classes that they're going to take that they're supporting. I hate the word technique because dance is all a technique. I think this is like competition speak that's been created, but classes where they learn their dance only, classes where they're going to do ballet, jazz, tap, whatever it is that you want them to do. Think about the jump, right? And whatever you're thinking about, think about what I'm saying about the pace. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so think about what you can offer them. They can always opt into extra classes. Okay. So now I'm going to show you what we do for our age group. So for our premier dancers, our dancers entering kindergarten, first grade in the 24-25 school year and joining for the very first time. Okay, so this would be like a brand new group. That's like, I'm coming from a Twinkle Stars 4 or 5 class. And for those of you that are subscribers on this call, I will tell you right now that your 4 or 5 twinkles, if you're doing the program the way we have it, with all of our voice skills and everything, they will be ready to go into this program. They will be ready to go. They'll be, whether you're doing tap, jazz, whatever. We loved doing tap with our premieres initially because I feel like it's easier. It's easier to put a dance on them. And it really just helps with their rhythm and change of weight and all that, but you can do what you want. They have to take 1 mini ballet class. It's going to be 45 minutes. And then they do a technique rehearsal. So we've really watered this down from where I used to be. It used to be they had to take a ballet, a tap, a jazz, and then had a rehearsal. Now that's ideal, right? It's wonderful. If you want to do it that way, please do it. But this is what we do now, and we get more people joining the program. And then that way we can keep building them, right? So I'm looking for a broader base to start with, and then we'll keep adding more each year. And in that, it'll be tap or jazz, depending on which dance. We do a lot of tap during this time. And in 45 minutes, we will teach them the dance and we'll work on tap skills. Okay. So literally they're going, if they were doing a 45-minute Twinkle Stars 4-5 class, all they have to do is jump to an hour and a half. So 40, that's right. Yeah, no, my math is. So in tuition, it's only an hour and a half. And, in our events, we'll talk more about that in our next session. But that is what we're doing. Okay. I do recommend this. This could be for ages 5 to 7. I still think it's enough time, and give them optional classes if they can take. And they will learn a lot because you're doing specific things in these groups. Okay, for our minis. Now the minis literally can be like 6, 7, 8, not, you know what I mean? Like you can decide how you want to do this. And it's not super clear cut, but for today, we're talking like 6, 7, 8. Okay. Maybe entering first, second, third grade. And this is maybe their first year. If they come to you at like 6 or 7, they're going to have to jump in to whatever it was that your minis were doing before. So remember, like you want to make it so that they can join in. See what I mean? So like if you've got them like way off and there's only 5 of them, that their 5 are going to be great, but they are an island and you have to serve them as only 5. I want to serve them as 12 or whatever it's going to be. So they have to take a mini ballet, a mini jazz, a mini tap, and then they'll be in whatever dances that we cast them in. So maybe I'm casting them in a jazz and a tap. And each of those dances have its separate rehearsal for 30 minutes. 45 minutes is better. But honestly, for the minis, I feel like in this age group, 45 minutes could be a little too long. You might lose them, but obviously more time is better. If you're able to meet with them twice a week for the same dance, that's even better. But again, you're gonna battle family schedules and time and money and resources. So you want to really think about that. I put these classes back to back as much as I can. So they become 2 times a week. So they become, maybe do their ballet jazz back to back and then their tap and rehearsal. So trying to make the schedule good for them without, killing your entire studio schedule is always key as well. Okay, then let's talk a little bit about company light. So company light would be for dancers that are ages 9 to 15 who are like, you know what, like they want to do it. They've been with you for a while. They're doing basic ballet. They're doing a ballet class or jazz class, but the parents are like, oh, I don't want to take on this whole thing. Maybe they have another activity. So you can give them a lighter schedule, and maybe if there's enough of them, put them in their own group that does a few less events to sort of start a lighter version. Most of the people that I put into this, if we have them who want it, always end up doing more the next year. So sometimes this is great to offer to, like, if you have a beginning, intermediate jazz and you've got a nice group in there, say, hey, you guys, you know what? If you just took 1 extra ballet class and then did a rehearsal and go to 1 event a year, plus you do Nutcracker, I don't know, something like that, you could be a part of the performing company. And mostly that's selling it to the parents. By that time, if they've not put them in your company program, it's because there's probably a time and money sort of boundary for them. And so in order to get them to cross over into the program, you might have to create something like this. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can do for that age group, specifically if you're rebuilding, right? Okay. And then our hip hop crew. So if we always had kids who just took hip hop, and that's fine, no problem. And so to make that jump to taking ballet and all those things at like an older age would be harder. So we do let them just take 1 hip hop class and do 1 rehearsal, and then they can be in hip hop crew. Also, our kids that are in performing company and also want to do hip hop, they certainly can. And they just have to opt into those classes. So I think it's great. It's a good way to build, people that stay with you a long time. And it helps with your revenue, all that good stuff. So you want to try to find ways for kids to be more engaged in your studio without having to take on the entire load of classes. Okay, so the pre-professional track, this would be the sort of our general performing company, ages 9+. I would say at the top end, my teen seniors are taking 12 to 14 hours a week of dance, a lot of ballet, probably 4 ballet classes a week, 2 jazz, a contemporary rehearsal. It's a variance. And that's a different conversation. And we can touch on this for the next session. I'll reserve a few minutes to talk about what happens when they're like really all in, and then they join and they get to high school and they want to do dance team, and how to kind of keep them going without losing it on both sides. We'll table that. But for the most part, this is kind of what this looks like. Like our juniors right now that are 10 to 12 years old, they're taking probably 2 ballet classes a week, a third one on Saturdays if they want to do Nutcracker, 1 to 2 jazz, 1 elective, which would be hip hop or tap, and then 1 to 2 rehearsals. So again, you can kind of do the math on what that looks like as far as hours per week and what tuition would look like. But that's kind of where we are. Right now, our juniors are probably doing a little less than they did before. Like I said, it's been a rebuilding for me. But each year we add in more. And I think the parents are also going, okay, good. I'm seeing the progress of my child. They like the program. They like their friendships there. I'm willing to invest more in this the following year. So you always know that you can add more classes to their schedules the following year, but just sort of overdo it, just to try to keep them in. Okay, so we want to balance your studio events with your performing company events. And I'm going to touch on, this is going to be like the big emphasis for our next session for next Friday. I want to kind of go through different types of events, ones that we recommend, talk through doing your own performing company showcase and workshop series at your studio, how to get that started. But the truth is right now, if you're like needing to kind of get this going, I want you to make sure that you're balancing the type of events and how many with your age groups, right? So for my premieres, I think they go to 1 dance competition and they do the showcase and then the 2 shows a year. And that is perfect for them, right? But I'll go through that in more in detail. But this is one of the bigger decisions you make each year for the following year, is what kind of events and how many you're going to do. And that has to be balanced also at the same time with your studio requirements and your rec kids that you really need to focus on as well. Okay, let's talk a little bit about costs, because I feel like this is where, like I said, it's going to be time and money for your parents. And just touching on tuition. So first and foremost, we do not do an unlimited. I do not do just a flat rate ever. I've done that maybe one time in my life. It doesn't work. And it really needs to be based on how many classes they take. So it's very true that a group of 20 dancers that are in your mini group will be paying the same amount, of course, because they're taking the same amount of classes, but every class has a cost to it. If we ever do an unlimited or something like that, to me, you either lose them because they want to take 1 million classes, not 1 million classes for them to take. This works at a gym because the gym is open 24 hours a day and anybody can come in and get on a treadmill. But it does not work for classes because classes have a specific cost attached to them. And you will lose your shirt, if you will, if you do it that way. So I do believe that your tuition really needs to be based on how many hours they take according to your normal tuition schedule. And of course, there's probably always going to be a multiple class discount that you're offering just in general. But you do have to make sure that you're not giving away the farm here for your performing company kids. There is a thought when the parents think about it, they probably think, well, I'm paying the most, so I'm the most important. Well, yes and no. You pay the most, but you actually pay the least per hour because you're doing 14 hours a week. The funniest thing is at our top end, our teens that take like 14 hours a week, at 12 hours a week, they sort of max out. So the unlimited almost kicks in at that time. So when they say, like, if I have to cancel a class, well, we want a credit. And then we go back and we're like, well, actually, you don't get a credit because you're already getting those 2 hours you're not actually paying for. Or at 12 hours, they want a credit, they'll get like $6. Well, what do you mean? Yes, because once you get to multiple classes, that's honestly how much you're paying. So you have to be really careful with this because, that's where like you can like totally take over your whole schedule with 40 performing company kids and you're wondering why you're not making any money. And it's for that reason. So I do believe tuition should be based on your natural scale of tuition. I don't really have any fees. There's no performing company fee. Like, the only time we do a fee is when we have a guest choreographer come in. They do have to pay for that. It's per person. It includes the time for the choreographer. But for the most part, specifically, your little guys are under 8s. There's no extra fees other than costumes, makeup, hair accessories, shoes and tights, company warm-ups. And now, a little bit about costumes. So we don't want this to be cost prohibitive, right? So what we want is a sweet spot. The sweet spot in general for your studio is for you to have more dancers taking 2 to 3 hours a week. Why? Because once they get past that, you're going to see that per class discount is going to eat into a little bit of your profitability. But second class, 2 hours a week, 3 classes a week, you're still probably getting a pretty prime price for those, and they're not going to take up all of your space. Okay. So that's why your performing company is an important part of your studio, and it's important to have that part as a healthy part of a financially healthy. Okay. So if you make your costumes $300 for one costume, then the parent of a 7-year-old that's sane is going to say, no, but thanks. That was great. You might only get the people who aren't sane to pay that. So, and later you will kick yourself going, why did I get into a relationship with a lot of people that are not playing with a full deck of cards here? So costumes for us, of course, we are going to maybe add things to them. They're going to have, they're going to be a better deal. Or, like a more intense feeling if they're going to have gloves and hats and shoes, because we want them to look a lot more polished and finished than maybe a recital costume looks. They're going to wear them more. So we stay really at like a $90 range, $100 range. And for the most part, we used to have all of our costumes made custom. Now that's not even possible. I think the shift from COVID to what we're doing now just makes that almost impossible. Good news is that costume companies have great costumes now, and I will give you my recommendations in our next session. So keeping your costumes affordable, I think, is important. Shoes and tights that they need, all that good stuff. Also, remember when you're casting, don't put your 5-year-olds in 7 dances, even though they look like they want to do it. The parents will want to do it, but now they have to buy 7 costumes and they may quit. So I would say 1 to 2 dances is perfect. And then that way they can afford those things. Okay. We do have warm-up jackets. We don't require that they all have them. Again, this is one of those things that I think you need to think about. Is there a reason for this? Is this cost prohibitive to my tuition, right? Is it cost prohibitive to doing my company showcase? It's going to, if we think about competitions, we send all that money out. We're to talk about keeping some of it yourself and making sure you make money on that. But your performing company showcase, that's yours. That's a third performance. So if I make them do this and they don't join, but anyway, we charge about $120. This is an old price. That's okay, Amanda. Our costumes right now are about, we take $100 at the beginning. And then if we have anything extra, we will, and we probably make about $30 to $40 commission on those. Convention costs, are, they're all over the board, but we add up. We do mark up our competition conventions, convention or any fee. Okay, let's talk about this. Anytime you collect money, okay, I don't know what your merchant rates are, but if someone's paying you with a credit card, then, and they give you $100, the business pays a fee on that. And it's going to be anywhere from 2.5% to 4% to 5%. So 5% of $100 is charged to you for them to use their credit card. So when you basically are collecting all of the money on the behalf of these outside organizations, and then you take that money and give it to them. You are their customer, by the way. You are their big customer. You take your customers, you take their money, and you give it to them. And so you have to make sure that, number 1, you're marking up enough to cover that expense. And number 2, your time, someone else's time. So there should be never a time in a business where you do anything that doesn't make a little bit of a margin. And I'm not talking about $1 million, but this is not the volunteerism, right? So we have to put up with a lot to do all this. So if the competition, if it's $50 for the entry fee, then you have to make sure you're calculating whatever fees it costs you to collect that money. And then on top of that, whatever kind of cost it takes you to do your entries and all of that good stuff, right? Maybe be there for the weekend and hire teachers to be there. All of those things are cost to you, the studio owner. And so you maybe that is $60 or $65 or whatever that is. You can be upfront about this if you want. It's up to you. They, some competitions and conventions, they put their prices out, and you can let them know that, yeah, that's their price, but this is the price to do it, whatever you want to do, but it has to be done. And you don't apologize for that, because that's what it costs to enter these things. And mostly, which is good, now most conventions and places are not taking independent entries anymore, which is nice, because they have to be enrolled in a studio in order for them to do these things. So, okay. Makeup, there are some kits that you can have them buy. Modion has great makeup kits. Nutcracker Performance, maybe there's costumes for that. Summer Intensives, Performing Company Showcase, things like that. So all of your general expenses, I think this is something that you give them once you've sold them on the vision. But the truth is, it's probably better to give them this before they say yes, and they can see what their tuition is. So just go through those things. And this is what's going to help you also get to, like, how many competitions do we do? Because how much money are my parents spending with Dance Academy USA competition versus how much are they spending with me? Well, I can't pay my tuition because all of my comp fees are so high, right? So you have to balance this. This is an important piece. And when we were doing 4 conventions a year, even though I knew I had a lot of people who wanted to do them, we did lose a lot of people. And they went to studios that did like lower end stuff, but probably because it was cheaper. And so I'd lose some of my good dancers, and it was just because maybe it was just too expensive. So it's just good to think about that and think about the cost to the parent, and also trying to keep them enrolled in your studio and paying you the tuition that they owe you as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about summer. I'm always a big cheerleader for the year-round dance program for your studio. And they say, well, how do you, what do you do with your company kids? So for us, we do a performing company intensive in July. And this is how we calculate it. If, let's just say, if the student normally pays $200 a month for tuition, and instead of starting their normal classes July 1, they're going to spend $200 on their summer camp. And we have a daily rate, and they can come certain days. We have some, it's not just for 1 week, because sometimes if you only do 1 week, then that student can't come. But we're basically going to get the equivalent of what they normally spend each month. Why is that important? If I put on a big intensive that's now $1,000 for them to do, they're not going to want to go. Some of them might. And then you end up with 5 kids in your intensive, and you've paid all these expensive people to come out to do it. So better thing is to try to keep them paying what they normally pay, and give them some extra options that they can, they can opt into more. But this is a great time for you to take new kids, especially your little ones, and have them come and learn what a 45-minute class for ballet will be, all that good stuff. And also we tell parents, listen, we know that you think, they always are worried, is my kid going to like this because they just came from a twinkle class? And I say, listen, let's get through summer. Let's see how they do. You can always, like, the worst case scenario before we order costumes is that you can decide to just take classes. So don't ever lose a student if they decide not to do it, because they're an important part of your studio. But this whole like performing company contract, like parents might think they're signing a car lease, like, let's not do that to them. And it's not enforceable anyway. Let's just give them as much information as you can up front. Let them like be a part of the program. And then when you get to a point where you have to order costumes and you tell them these are our events, we have what we call an agreement. And in that agreement, it basically outlines all of the things we're going to be doing that year. And it'll say, we're going to this event on this day, and we're going to this event on this day. And it's important that you be there, right? And so please commit to this, and this is how much you pay. But is a contract enforceable? No. And then you're just going to create, problems and conflict where you don't need it, and just takes your energy away. Like, you quit the performing company team and I'm going to sue you. That's not possible, you guys. So, like, I think that it's just better to you tell them up front, but give them until August or September, because at that point there might be some shifting. Okay. And before you start your choreography and all that, you kind of want to get a really good understanding of who's committed to this year. You don't want to force anybody into this, because that just makes for things that are sort of, just crisis that you don't need. So we generally run from 9 to 12 noon. And then in the afternoon, we do our older dancers. We don't do more than 3.5 hours at a time. It's not an 8-hour day. So we kind of make it a nice, well-rounded experience for them. And at the same time, we're getting that tuition in July. Okay, so here's some sample performances. We will talk more about this next time. I want to get to some of these chats. But we do So You Think You Can Choreograph. That's an in-studio thing. We do our Holiday Magic, our Nutcracker, Performing Company Showcase. They perform at our Twinkle Stars storybook showcases. Those are our Twinkle shows, recital, other performing opportunities, plus a few competitive events. So we're going to expand more on this in my next session, so that you can really plan next year and really try to keep all of these ideas of balance at the forefront of the program. So I will leave you with, they only know what you show them. Commit to your vision. They only know what you show them. If you take your beloved little twinkles that have been with you since they were 2, and you take them to 9 competitions or even 1, and they've never seen this before, what do you think they're going to want to do? Win a dance competition. So just know that whatever you're taking them to, that's what they're going to know. Okay. So be very picky and commit to your vision, stick to it. And I promise that you will find where you will find that place where you want to be at the end of the year. All right. So enough of me. Oh, let's have Amanda talk about Sparkle Society, and I'll take a break.
Yeah. Yes, I'm happy to. So we just want to welcome you to the Sparkle Society. We did start a new YouTube channel dedicated to our Twinkle Star Dance Sparkle Society. So we'll record all of our webinars and upload them there for you to listen back, but it's always better live. It's a free membership, and really just, I think, an extension of what Tiffany has created through Twinkle Star Dance, which is community and connection of studio owners and dance teachers that are doing what we all do day in and day out. So there's weekly inspiration. We do a weekly newsletter that's delivered straight to your inbox, as well as the monthly webinars, and then invitations to live events and things like that. I want to remind you, we have the last part of our series, part 3, for Secrets to Building a Successful Performing Company, is going to be Friday, January 26th. So we'll take a little pause next week, jump back into things, but that gives you a moment to listen to part 1 and part 2 again if you have any questions, and then show up on January 26th with us. And then if you've loved this series or loved any of Tiffany's webinars, I really encourage you to come in person. Nothing beats being face-to-face, looking someone in the eye, and also just dedicating 2 days to really work on your business rather than putting out fires. And so I really want you to come to our Pinnacle Dance Conference and Retreat. It's at the Ritz-Carlton in Dove Mountain, which hands down one of the top hotels I've ever stayed at. We're going to be there July 20th and the 21st, and it'll be 2 days of movement sessions, business classes. We'll have some guest speakers. But again, I think just really honing in on what makes your business profitable, but also balancing that passion part of your business and why you opened a dance studio or have stayed around dance. And so we hope that you will join us for that. In addition, we also have a Facebook and Instagram page for Twinkle Star Dance. We share teaching tips, cute little images, videos, anything like that. So we would love to have you. Oh, Robin is in Scottsdale. Yes, come on down to Pinnacle. We would love to have you, Robin. It really is such a great event. There is a virtual component as well, but I really think setting the time aside, coming, being in person. Tiffany obviously is a wealth of knowledge, and any of our speakers and stuff would have such great things to say. So I'll turn it over to questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda.